Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, nice to be back.
It's nice to have you. I was looking around to see what you're up to. I went to your Facebook page. You got a couple of things up there. You're very proud of what you've achieved. And I know we talked about the book Girls Gotta Eat last time, but you've been very busy since then, and you've written a trilogy, and I'm really curious to hear about that. But let's just, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and how long you've been doing this and what your goals are.
Okay. Where I'm from southeastern Ohio. I grew up mostly in a town called Coshocton in Ohio. I have lived most of my adult life in the St. Louis metropolitan area. I got there because I enlisted in the Air Force and I was stationed on Scott Air Force Base for 6 years. Um, as a computer programmer, I worked in the St. Louis area as in IT for a few years. I've done some 3D graphic artwork for various companies and a whole lot of writing, fiction, trying to make a career of that at the moment. So
Hmm. And I noticed that you do all the graphics for your book covers as well. Is that true?
yeah, and it's not because I think I'm so amazing as it's one of those. I had an issue with a book where we published late because the art from the artist didn't get to us in time. And it's just a matter of I'm terrified of missing a deadline now and just took it into my own hands. As I said, I did some artwork for 3D graphic artwork for companies in the past. I've also done. I started briefly in college as a illustrator, and that because of money reasons ended up why I joined the military instead.
Yeah, sure.
So I have
Understandable.
some skill in graphics, not like professional level, but
Yeah, well, the arts is a very difficult thing to sustain. I mean, you can get into it and be good at it, but to sustain it through life, let me tell you, from personal experience, not easy.
yeah,
So we talked about the book Girls Gotta Eat last time.
yes.
At that point in time, did you know you were going to write a trilogy with that being book one?
In fact, what happened was I wrote the whole trilogy before I marketed it. Well, what happened was I wrote the first book as a book for there's a author named Ed Greenwood who created the Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms setting, and he had started a company to try to get new authors published. Um, and he had read some of my stuff before. Uh, I was 14th, I think, on publication roster to be published through his company on a series called Hell Maw. So the first
Mhm.
book was actually written as Hell Maw, A Girl's Gotta Eat.
Right.
And when his project kind of fell through, he gave me the green light to go ahead and scrape off the serial numbers and proceed with the book. At that point, a friend said it's probably going to sell better if you can have a trilogy. So in 2017, I wrote A Girl's Gotta Eat. And then in 2019, I wrote the second book called Old Black Water. And in 2020, I wrote the third book of the series, Invasive Species. And then that completed the trilogy, and I marketed it from there.
And you're going to leave it as a trilogy, or you're thinking of a series, or moving on to some other topics?
I have about a third of the fourth book written, and it is I waffled between a title of either being um, um, Exquisite Corpse or Occasionally Deceased. And I think simply because you can go out and find a book, multiple books called Exquisite Corpse, but there's nothing called Occasionally Deceased. So if the
Mm,
fourth book does come out, it'll be called Occasionally Deceased.
yeah. Do you regularly do title searches and make sure that you're unique?
I do. And the first time I did A Girl's Gotta Eat, I only found one other book with that title, and it was like 16 years old or something. And I'm like, oh, good, this is going to work great. And now there's like 9 or 10 books with that title, and I'm like, oh my god.
I think there's songs called that too, or like it's just an
Yeah, yeah.
expression, right? It's just an expression.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought it was not. It wasn't an expression I'd ever heard used as a title, but the world is huge and internet search is easy now, so
Yeah. Could be
The
misleading.
second,
It has a certain connotation in certain circles. I won't mention them, but we can use our imagination. And I think I've seen it
and
in
those
before.
connotations are intentional.
That's right.
I Yeah, in the book, I had somebody leave a review on the first book, and they said, "This isn't what what I associate with this phrase." And I'm like, apparently we run in different circles
That's
because
right. And I
so
couldn't find at first a shot of the third book, and so I know very little. I was trying to get
hang
into
on,
the,
I've
and
got
there
them
you
right
probably got
here.
it right
Let
there,
me
right?
Yeah, I got a pile of books right here.
Well, there you go.
That is the cover of the third book.
Well, we've seen it already because you're going to give me a JPEG of that. So
Oh, good. Right.
yeah,
Right.
right.
Exactly. Get that
Oh,
artwork up
we're
there.
breaking down the fourth wall of
Man,
media here. How
you're way
confusing.
too you're being way too professional here. What is this?
Yeah.
I would also point out that not only did I finish the third book, but there is a compiled trilogy edition of the whole Suffering Sequence
So is that
series.
like a box thing there? Oh my goodness, you put it
It's
into
just a
one.
big honking Stephen King
Wow.
thick book. Yeah.
I've actually thought of doing that because I wrote a trilogy. I thought, what would it be like if I put it all together?
Yeah, it's a 770 something like that pages long as a trilogy.
Yeah.
And this is not the small paperback format. These are the bigger ones. So there's, many words, 250,000 words, I think, for the whole trilogy, something like that. I
Now,
won't shut up. I can't. I just keep that.
yeah, I know the feeling. What does your editor think about all that?
Um, he actually is the one that has been compiling the books.
Hmm.
I do the cover art. He compiles them. He does the editing. He does the formatting inside. And particularly for the trilogy, he said he didn't know the last time he checked, Lulu, the company that we print through, could only do like 750 pages. So he was really concerned, but he uploaded it and they were like, yeah, we can do about I guess they can do about 800 pages now. We
Okay.
really pushed the boundaries of what this company could print for us. So,
Fascinating stuff. Uh, devil's advocate, who would want to buy a book that big and think they're going to sit down and read it?
oh, there
Attention
are
spans
people
are really getting shorter and shorter, right?
there are people who read constantly and plow through a book or two a week easily. So what they sometimes look for, there are people who will go look for a series that's like, oh, I won't even start one till it's 9 books long or something
Mhm.
like that,
Yeah.
because it's like I'll plow through it in a week and then it'll be gone. And why should I invest my reading time on something that's a mere 90,000 words? But why people should read this one is because it's amazing. It is amazing.
Yes, of course it's amazing. It's a trilogy. Trilogies are cool. Is it still called a trilogy even though it's in one book like that?
Yeah, this is actually the title of this is Suffering
Suffering
Sequence
Sequence
Trilogy.
Trilogy. Cool. Cool.
Because
All right.
it's just a compilation of the 3 books
There you
all
got
at
the picture.
once.
That's a
Yeah.
fantastic way of doing it.
Yeah,
I think you've inspired me.
when you start formatting your own books and doing like what if you're going to sell this book, let's say you go to a local author thing, someone walks up and it's like, well, what's this book about? You should, in my opinion, they should look up, and what the first thing they should do is see a very clear, legible title. This is my opinion. Clear, legible title, some graphic thing that honestly doesn't matter that much because you roll it over and let them read the little back blurb, and that's how much time you have to catch their attention.
Hmm.
Kind of elevator pitch, but for regular people instead of, you're not selling, you're not schmoozing some executive. You're trying to get a reader
Yeah.
who might be interested in your product as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And that's something that I learned is the craft of the blurb, I guess, is as kind of important as a lot of other writing that you do.
Hmm. Hmm. We were talking about your editor before. Were you referring to Gary Hill?
Gary Hill, yes. Gary Hill runs a company called Tales of Wonder and Dread and publishes a lot of anthologies. And I have a lot of short fiction inside a lot of his anthologies. I think I'm up to 15 short stories or something like that. You know, that magic thing where someone, you try and you try and you try to get someone interested in your work, and then someone kind of falls in love with it. And the next thing you know, it's like, well, Gary, you got this thing coming up. Would you be interested in this? And what he said to me the other day is, I don't even read your stuff before I compile the things. I know it's so good that I'm just going to include it. And I'm like, thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Gary also, I was talking about writing this thing as a trilogy, and I finished it and then I tried to market it. Remember, the first book was written on spec, and then that company collapsed.
Yeah.
So I found a second company, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're interested," and then they collapsed. And I was really devastated and feeling really bad about my writing at all. And every time something like this happens, that fragile little artist ego takes a bruise, and you want to just throw it all into a trash can and forget about it. But then Gary read one of my short stories and published it, and then a second one. And we got talking about, like, you know, would you be interested in doing this, publishing this? And he had just so happened to be thinking about publishing someone else's novel at the time. So yeah, that's how that happened.
Okay.
And I was out of steam. I couldn't like push myself through to finish. Writing a book is hard. Doing the artwork is hard. Editing is, it's hard. It's almost impossible to edit your own stuff because you can't see your own errors.
Mm-hmm.
So you almost have to have someone else to do something on your project for you.
Yes.
And particularly the marketing and stuff, I'm not good at tooting my own horn, except
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
in a conversation with you.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's the whole point of this show. Tell me about your book. Well, why don't we get right to it?
Sure.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to give a little precursor to talk about the third book of the trilogy, just so we know where we're at and how we get to there?
Sure. First book is called A Girl's Gotta Eat. And it is a young woman named Lucy who has had a bad childhood and is suffering from the trauma of that and trying to teach herself how to be an adult. Her mother had suffered from schizophrenia and religious delusions, and Lucy was brought up in a bad environment because of that, forced to run away and do sex work to survive. She is working as an exotic dancer and gets jumped by a couple guys and saved by this uh, mysterious woman who does something to these guys that had been attacking her. Makes it looks like they're dead. The next character that shows up is, his name is Javier Torres. He's an FBI agent, and he is on the trail of a serial killer that just so happens to be this tall, strange woman that saved Lucy. Lucy befriends this woman and then finds out that she is a succubus. She is a shape shifting, soul sucking, flesh eating daemon. Um, but she's also not happy about feeding on humanity. It doesn't bring her joy to destroy a human being. So she tries to take them down as low as she can on their energy level and leave them alive. Um, and this trio, uh, obviously, it's an unstable relationship when the FBI agent is trying to hunt the serial killer, etc. It turns out that in the process of doing this case, Torres finds out that the daemons, there's many of them, maybe as many as 200 on Earth, are infiltrating the human systems of power into the government and killing and replacing people, and further up the food chain, as it was.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point being that they're trying to turn humanity into their feedlot. The
Right.
book ends with them getting rid of a second daemon that had infiltrated the government. And Torres makes an uneasy alliance with this creature that he calls Vespid, because she's the only creature that can see the daemons as daemons when they're shapeshifted. That's
Mm.
the first book. The second book, it's set a year later in 2019. Torres has problems, cognitive problems, because he was in a fight and got smashed in the face with a rifle, like the butt of the rifle crushed a bunch of bones in his face, and he had to have surgery. And now he's got nosebleeds and concussion issues and stuff like that, and is starting to see into the world of the Damons, because as it turns out, the more if you inflict damage on them and anything escapes their body, it burns into a black smoke that then tries to get into people, and it starts changing you. You start becoming more than human and start having that same thirst for the energy, the essence that humans produce. So it turns you into a monster the more you're exposed to it. Torres, how to say it? Torres is being summoned by another thing that is not a daemon. It is the genius Loki, the animistic spirit of the Mississippi River. And I refer to it in the second book.
Old Blackwater.
Old Blackwater.
Yeah.
I refer to it in the second book as Mishipeshu, which is a name of a Southern ceremonial complex creature that exists, but it probably ought to more realistically just be called Mississippi. And this thing summons Torres, and from his mind pulls out a creature, a monster that is used to destroy the Damons, because opposed to this natural order of Mishipeshu and the for lack of a better term, the suffering sequence. You're born, you suffer, you die, that sort of thing. The Ouroboros of life. That's her. That's what Mishipeshu is. She is natural life. And opposed to that are these Damons, who are not even of this world, not even made of real material. They're sort of concepts coalesced. So Mishipeshu makes this creature from Torres, this big monster. And then there's a big climactic fight at the end of the second book, and you know how that goes. The third book is called Invasive. Oh, wait, hang on. Third book is Invasive Species. And they bring on board another person who has encountered one of these Damon things. His name is Vinnie Bowers, and he is works for the Missouri Department of Conservation. He is specialist in eradicating invasive species, hence the title. And the species that he's trying to eradicate are the Damons. And this group of misfit weirdos, to include Lucy, who has traumatic childhood, Agent Torres, whose brain is kind of going squishy, one of Lucy's friends from art school named Greg, who is he describes himself as a con-going basement troll in action figure. So he's kind of the basement nerd guy, but he ends up being an incredibly good fabricator of mechanical things. And this team assembles to try to stop the Damons. The problem is that by the third book, the Damons have had their fill, and all of the humans that are followers of the Damons, granted power by them, all of those humans and all of the Damons come after this team to silence them. And it is a brutal, bloody ending.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you did that. When I ask some people to tell me about their book, and understandably, they're a little reluctant to give it away. But
well, I kind of gave away a little bit of the first and second book, but the third book is
that's okay. That's okay. That's all right. It's people who like this kind of stuff will just gravitate towards it and want to read it for themselves. I'm sure there's a lot of details in that thick book of yours.
Yes.
And I've asked some authors if they have a message, or is it pure entertainment? And it's a 50-50 mix. Where do you stand on that? Do you have a message you want to get out, or are you just writing entertainment?
There are a lot of themes in this. some of them are about identity and wearing masks and the way we present to the world as opposed to who we truly are.
Hmm.
Um, and that comes through, I think, clearly in the succubus character, because she understands that she is acting at all, all the time. She's lying constantly, and that's her world
Hmm.
until until she makes a legitimate friend. So, um,
Yeah.
what else is there? Not there. I mean, there's a lot about surviving abuse through the series, from one direction or another. There are characters that I didn't mention in my synopsis that deal with a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you
I have
mentioned,
to put I have to put a LGBT warning on the book
really?
because some people are angered by the existence of
Okay.
LGBT people,
Well,
and one of the main characters ends up. It ends up that one of the main characters in the series is a transsexual sex worker. So
okay. I got some of that stuff going on in my trilogy. I never thought I had to warn people. I guess you're right.
I,
Some people wouldn't
I've
like it.
had people complain, like,
Really?
how dare you put a gay person in my story? It's like,
Oh,
well,
oh, okay. All right. You do mention demons, and so that kind of has a religious undertone to it. Where do you
right.
stand with that?
Do you mean, do I believe in them,
No,
or
like is religiosity brought into play in because demons are I associated with religious
right?
beliefs. I mean, it's
There is a
supernatural.
major thread of religion in the story because Lucy, the character Lucy's mother, has religious delusions. There is
Hmm.
a major thread of Lucy being, I'm going to say, angry at God. Um, and her point of view of seeing the world, where if there was this all powerful God, why isn't he stopping this and that from happening, and taking that on herself, like, you know what, you're not doing your job, I'm going to do it for you.
Hmm.
um, there is a at one point somebody asks this Damon, succubus woman, if she came from hell. And she said, as far as I know, there isn't a hell or a heaven the way you all imagine it. I'm from this other place. So I sidestep what
Okay.
her existence is compared to the Christian religion, except that the people in the story frequently put her in this position where they say, well, she's a daemon, or she's an angel, or she's a this, or she's a
Yeah.
what do you call it, a Valkyrie, or there's a whole bunch of labels they're trying to apply to her. And
Hmm.
it's like, I just am what I am.
Yeah.
So
So when did you release the trilogy as a whole, or the third book? When was that published?
that was, I think it was February 29th we released. So look, like 19 days ago. Yeah.
Okay, 2024. Are you working on anything right now?
Sure.
Short of
um,
short of promoting your trilogy, which
no,
I'm sure
I
keeps you
should
busy.
be working on something, and I'm not really. I'm puttering around with short story stuff at the moment.
Yeah, you gotta
So
take a break every now and then, eh? I know.
yeah.
I wrote solidly for 4 years, and I haven't written in over a year now, and it's time to get
So
back to it. But I
yeah, and
needed a break.
there's a thing where it's like you have a battery and it starts to wear out. You
Yeah.
complete something, you're like, I'm never going to write again, I'm sick of that stuff. And then it just sort of trickles in. You're like, I've got this idea, it's been bouncing around in my head,
Yeah.
maybe if I did this. So yeah.
So I think I mentioned that on Amazon, I don't see this trilogy. Where can people buy it?
Okay. On Amazon, the first book is available, A Girl's Gotta Eat. Print copies, you can get those at lulu.com. And all three of those books, soft cover, hardcover, and the trilogy edition, are all available there. If you search Elizabeth Lynn Blackson or Gary Hill, they will show up. But
Mhm.
here's the thing,
Okay.
there's a little box that you have to click sometimes that says all content, like adult content or whatever, because these are brutal, horrible books. I've restricted them to 18 or no over. So
Okay.
they are uh, urban fantasy horror, and the horror is really horrible. So
Ooh. Well, I like The
gore and
Walking
blood and
Dead, so
death and
I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. Not the way I write, but
right,
I
right.
enjoy it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people write what sort of feels natural to them sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
And some people love reading horror and just aren't into writing it. So
Yeah.
I did have a couple scenes in this series where I had to stop and I'm like, I'm going to hell for writing that.
Yeah. People can be pretty brutal with each other. Torture scenes in movies tend to make me look away. I mean, I can see people just chopping heads off all day long. It doesn't bother me, but torture,
Yeah.
I have a soft tendency for that. I don't
You
like that. I don't
might be
like
a
to see.
little troubled by the second book in this series then.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what else can we talk about? You know what? I did notice something. Let me just pull it up here. I don't know if you want to talk about this.
No, go ahead.
I saw something on your Facebook page called
Sure.
Serenity Role Playing Game. You got credits there for it. There's three
Yeah.
of them. There's three of them. What's all that about?
Um, in I think it was 2008, a company called Margaret Weiss Productions created a role-playing game for the movie Serenity, which was sort of the end of the Firefly television series. They wrapped it all up. They created a role-playing game, a tabletop role-playing game, where you have dice and pencils and stuff. And I was a hyper nerd. I had told you I'd done some graphic artwork. At the time, I was unemployed, so I was just messing around making spaceship models and stats for them in this role playing game for free as a fan. As someone who had done a fair amount of 3D modeling and texturing, and a lover of spaceships in general, I was having fun just goofing around and supplying players with free content, and they were going to do a supplement to the role playing game called Six Shooters and Spaceships.
Hmm.
And the Six Shooters part was the first half of the book is gear, like different guns and tools and stuff you can use in the game. The second half were new starships and the crews who flew them. So, like, you'd get a spaceship and then a modified version of the spaceship that was specific to this crew, and then 3 to 6 characters that were part of the crew of this ship. So I took or I should say, because of production reasons, the company Margaret Weiss Productions asked me to do the second half of this ship, since I was apparently the person producing the most starships for the game,
Okay.
free or otherwise.
Yeah.
So I in 2 weeks I scraped together all the art, all the characters, everything to get the project out the door. And one of the benefits to it was one of the crew in that book of a ship called the Cantankerous. Um, the crew of that ship were the players in my game. Like, I sit around on Friday nights making bad jokes and playing role playing games. And my crew, my players were the crew of that ship. And so,
Cool.
nerd credit.
Excellent. Excellent stuff.
and the starships in the movie Serenity, a lot of them I put in that book, and so I get to do sort of the semi-canonical name of various classes of starship.
Excellent.
I'm a nerd.
Well, that's good. That's
I
good.
think I can't tell, don't know if you can tell, I'm wearing a
Is a nerd the
superhero
same thing
t-shirt.
is a nerd the same thing as a geek?
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I heard it once said that the geeks shall inherit the earth. Maybe I misheard that.
No, I think you got it right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, tell you what, why don't you give one final push on selling your trilogy, and I'll put you full frame and you can go for it and try and convince people to buy it.
Sure.
Go for it.
If you like uh, the Dresden Files and wish that it was written by Clive Barker, you should read my books. If you like blood and gore mixed in with your supernatural urban fantasy, you should buy my book. If you have mental illness, you should buy my book.
I just love talking with you. You know, we bump into each other on social media. It's always a pleasant thing.
Yeah. It's been great having met you
Yeah,
and doing your show all those, what was it, 2 years ago now?
2 years
And
ago. Yeah.
and now yeah, like you said, bumping into each other on social media. Uh I love your show. It pops up in my feed and I watch it when it does, and I'm thrilled to be back because you're genuinely a great guy, and it's been a lot of fun doing the interviews, trying to get over that sort of stage fright thing, of having a camera pointed at me. And your interviews are very casual and make it very easy for me. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. It's a pleasure knowing you and having you on the show again, and you're always welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Elizabeth, it's been a treat. You take care of yourself now.
You too. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you for watching. If you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then please consider hitting that like button and leaving a comment. You could also subscribe and ring that bell because I release 2 episodes per week, one on Wednesdays and one on Saturdays. And if you are an author, I would love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing and be kind to one another.